Hey everyone, Daniel here from Oxford Performance Centre. Today I just wanted to have a little bit of chat about carbohydrates. Commonly get asked the question, are carbohydrates good for us? Are they bad for us? If I'm going to eat them, what is the best time to eat them? So I just wanted to kind of go over a few points today and give you guys a bit of information about what I believe is to be the best thing about carbohydrates, best time to eat them, and which carbohydrates are best for you. So before we get started, I think the best thing to start off with is actually defining what carbohydrates we're talking about. So I like to break carbs down into two categories. I think the first one is starchy carbohydrates. So these are breads, rice, pasta, oats, anything along that nature. And then on the other side of this we have fibrous carbohydrates, so your fruits and your vegetables, so leafy green vegetables, cruciferous vegetables, and so on. I believe carbohydrates have got a bad name over the years because everybody believes that it's carbohydrates that are making us fat, and this simply isn't true. It's the overconsumption of food that's making us fat, and predominantly it's carbohydrates. And this is mainly just because they taste good and everybody likes them. But it's not so much carbohydrates to blame, it's more the actual person eating them and how many carbohydrates they're actually eating. So a lot of people think that carbohydrates are to blame because of the effect it has on insulin. So insulin is a hormone that's released when you eat carbohydrates, and the idea of insulin is to take that sugar to a cell. So it kind of has three options that it's going to go to. It's either going to go to a muscle cell if glycogen stores are depleted. It's going to go to just a normal cell if it needs the energy and it can actually get into the cell. And then thirdly, it's a fat cell, so where it's going to be stored for later use, which is when overconsumption happens, where it predominantly tends to go, and that's where we get increase in body fat. So off the back of this, people blame carbohydrates, but it's not really carbohydrates the issue, it's the overconsumption that is the issue. Or then again, having the carbohydrates at the wrong time of day. So from this, a lot of people then adopt a low carbohydrate diet. Now, a low carbohydrate diet is great, but it needs to be monitored and tracked properly. So a lot of people will start a low carb diet and they'll go on it for maybe 3, 6, 9, 12 weeks, whatever, and they will see great results at the start. In the onset, they'll drop body fat, they'll feel great, they'll have all of this. But if you don't bring carbs in regularly, you'll start to plateau in your weight loss, and most people will generally start to put weight back on. And this is mainly because metabolism starts to crash, and also it has lots of effects on other hormones in the body, especially in men. It has a huge effect on testosterone. Women, it's going to mess up their cycles a lot. So, a low carb diet is really good, but carbohydrates need to still be brought into the diet quite frequently, so we get the benefits out of those and we don't cause any damage to ourselves. Positive effects that carbohydrates have on your metabolism is in the aspects of affecting hormones like leptin and ghrelin. So when you have a low carb diet for too long, your metabolism will start to drop down. This is where people start to plateau and then either put on weight or they get metabolic damage or something like this. Reintroducing carbohydrates or having carbohydrates in the diet every now and again can help prevent these happening. So with leptin, for instance, which is the appetite manipulating hormone, it is a long-term affecting hormone. So when we think of this, we think that leptin can last hours, days, possibly even up to a week. So when we have a high carbohydrate meal, it will boost leptin levels. So when leptin levels go up, our appetite goes up and our hunger goes down. Okay. On the other hand, we have ghrelin, which is like a more of an immediate acting hormone. So when we have a high carbohydrate meal, so ghrelin is designed to, when there's not much food in the stomach, ghrelin gets released tells your brain that there's not much food in here, that we're hungry, that you need to eat. When you eat, ghrelin then drops back down and you're not hungry anymore. Once the food empties out of your stomach, ghrelin starts to get released again, and then it tells your brain that, okay, it's time to eat. So what happens when we have a high carbohydrate meal and we're filled up? Ghrelin is released, tells the brain we're hungry, have a high carbohydrate meal, and then ghrelin drops down. But with carbohydrates, it has been shown that an hour later or so is that ghrelin will then be released again, but in an even higher amount than it previously was. So you might have noticed this yourself, that you've had a high carbohydrate meal, and then 1 to 2 hours later you are just ravishing hungry again. You are hungrier than what you were before when you ate previously. And this is because carbohydrates directly affect ghrelin. So it pushes it even higher than what it was before. So again, this shows us that we need to be careful when we have carbohydrates, because they can affect us for the rest of the day. Carbohydrates also stimulate a hormone called serotonin. So serotonin is a hormone that helps bring us to sleep, so it calms us down in the evening and helps us fall asleep. But it also is a feel-good hormone. So you can think again, once you have a high carbohydrate meal, that you're going to get a low production of serotonin, so it's going to kind of calm you down a little bit, make you drowsy, and then it is also going to have this feel-good release to it as well. So again, when we're thinking about timing carbohydrates, we need to factor that in. So when do we want to be feeling good? What's going to happen when that good feeling dies down? Serotonin production happens, we're going to get tired. What's going to happen 2 hours later? So timing becomes a huge factor when thinking about carbohydrates. So if we look at now the best time of day to have carbohydrates, we'll start with breakfast, and I'll show you the reason why I don't believe carbohydrates should be eaten for breakfast for people that are looking to lose weight and people that are overweight. Okay, so this is more for people that are looking to lose weight and overweight. This is not for extremely lean people. So when your goal is weight loss, carbs for breakfast, let's think about what they do. So we'll start with serotonin. So releasing serotonin in the morning is going to make you sleepy in the morning. It's going to release it a little bit, so it's going to make you, it possibly has a chance of making you drowsy. It's also going to release a feel-good hormone. So releasing a feel-good hormone, that's a good thing, that's going to make you feel good, but we've got to think of what's going to happen 2 hours later when these hormones start to die down. So you're going to get a little bit of a come down from that feel-good hormone, and you're just going to think of that feel-good hormone relating back to the carbohydrates you had for breakfast. So when you go for coffee, you're going to think, oh, I should get that muffin, or I should get that bagel, or I should get that something carbohydrate, something sugary, maybe it's a Mars bar, to re-spike that good feeling. Okay, so then if we look at that, we think that breakfast is probably not the best time to have carbohydrates. Again, then if we looked at ghrelin, its release on carbohydrates, it again is probably not the best thing to do. So with ghrelin and carbohydrates in the morning, we get that ghrelin spikes, tells us we're hungry, we have the carbohydrates for breakfast, ghrelin drops, we're not hungry. But then we have that delayed on effect of that ghrelin re-spiking higher than what it was before. So we've had breakfast, 2 hours later we're going to be even hungrier than when we ate before. So what are we going to do to quench this hunger? Well, we're starving, so we're going to go for carbohydrates again. And this is just going to be a vicious cycle of overeating. So at that point, it's not too much about the hormonal effect, it's more about the overconsumption from such an early part of the day, and we have such a long way to go until night. So our chance of overconsumption of calories is going to be greater. Then again, if we look at leptin levels and breakfast, so if we have carbohydrates for breakfast and the way they affect leptin, so like we said before, leptin is a long-term one. It's going to stimulate the metabolism to upregulate over a long period of time. And again, doing this in the morning is just going to have that same effect as having with ghrelin. It's just going to make us hungrier throughout the day. So the chance of overeating is going to be extremely high. So when should we have carbohydrates? Well, I believe that carbohydrates are best had at dinner, at night time, or post-workout. So my reasons for having carbohydrates at dinner is release of serotonin is going to help bring people to sleep. A lot of people have trouble sleeping these days just because of stress. So anything that's going to help is a great thing. So release of serotonin is number one. Number two is the feel-good mood of serotonin. So going to bed happy is going to be great for you. Better dreams, better, probably wake up in the morning better. There's nothing worse than going to bed angry. So waking up and going to bed feeling good is probably going to be a great thing. And then ghrelin. So the idea of like ghrelin getting re-released, re-stimulating even more later. So if we have dinner, say 2 hours, 1 hour before we go to bed, ideally we're asleep or about to go to bed when that second wave of hunger kicks in. So if that second wave of hunger kicks in, you can imagine your metabolism's upregulated and you're going to be going to bed at that time, then your chances of eating again are quite minimal. Then again, we look at leptin, and it's going to upregulate your metabolism because of the carbohydrates, then you're going to go to bed. So ideally, while you're asleep, ghrelin and leptin are causing your body to power through everything that you've just eaten, keeping your metabolism high all the way through the night until you wake up. So this is the idea of a refeed meal, that you have this big carbohydrate meal, and then the next day you wake up and you're leaner. So this is where that aspect comes in. On the other hand, I also think carbohydrates can be factored in post-workout, and this is probably another good time for people that are trying to lose weight, because this is the best possible chance that the carbohydrates will go not to a fat cell. So at night, we also run the risk of the carbohydrates that aren't being used as energy of going to a fat cell, but post-workout is probably our best opportunity where they will go to a muscle cell. So when we weight train, so lifting weights, getting that burn in the muscle, training to fatigue and close to failure, we start to burn muscle glycogen stores. So glycogen is basically sugar stored in a muscle for energy. So when we weight train, we deplete these stores. Then if we eat carbohydrates post-workout, ideally that chance is that carbohydrate is going to go into that muscle store to help store that muscle glycogen. Point here then becomes of not over-consuming, because there's only a certain amount that needs to go into the muscles. So if we eat too much, we're going to have that spillover effect, and if the body doesn't need it in the muscle tissue, then it is probably going to go straight to a fat cell. So like we were saying before, with carbohydrates, it all comes down to timing and quantity. So making sure you're eating the right amount of calories for you and your activity level, and then timing your carbohydrates, and also making sure you deserve your carbohydrates. If you're overweight and you're looking to lose fat, then carbohydrates once or twice a week is probably, like starchy carbohydrates, more than once or twice a week is probably enough. Fibrous carbohydrates, they should be eaten with every meal. But if your goal is weight loss and you're quite overweight, then my recommendation for females would be probably 50 grams of carbohydrates, either post-workout or at dinner. And for males, you could start at 100 grams of carbohydrates post-workout and or at dinner, and then monitor from there. If you find that your weight's starting to drop, you could increase it a little bit, or you could have it more frequently and monitor how it goes from there. Well, I hope that helps, guys. If you'd like more information, please feel free to email us here at Oxford Performance Centre. Happy to help anybody with their nutrition goals. And please subscribe to our YouTube channels. More movies coming out, more videos coming out often. And thank you for listening, and hope you enjoyed.